there's a gay bar in New Bedford.
Okay.
And I read their reviews. And so I one of the first reviews of the place I read was of a trans woman that came out there for her first time.
Okay, great.
And she said how she'd been treated so wonderfully. And I was like, all right, I can take a risk at this place. It's not far.
Yeah.
I'll get myself dressed up as nicely as I can. I remember I went there and I was very nervous, and there were people smoking cigarettes on the porch. So I was like, all right, I'm going to smoke a cigarette before I go in. And there was a gay couple out there, and Marco remarked on my dress, and he said, your dress looks beautiful.
Oh, great.
And so that made me kind of happy.
Great.
And so when I went in, and I found a place on the bar, I'm still very nervous. But then I met Ultima, and she was there with her boyfriend, Jeremy, and just dragged out to the hilt. And
so this is a drag performer?
she's a drag performer, and probably more gay than trans.
Okay, yeah.
And her boyfriend's gay too. And
there is some crossover there.
I'm learning
definitely.
this.
Yeah.
There's a spectrum.
Yeah.
And she saw my outfit, and she came right over and she said, oh, you look beautiful.
Great.
I'm Ultima, and
Great.
I'd love to meet you. And we struck up a conversation.
Great.
And from there, I would go, probably my first couple of weeks, I was going almost every night. I mean, other than my dogs, I don't have anyone to be concerned about.
Yeah.
And never to drink much. And I remember I decided on the way there, I was like, they're going to need to call you something.
Yeah.
So
and if you're wearing if you go out and you buy party clothes, you have to have a place to wear them. I mean,
of course.
Yeah.
And so I decided that I would be called Judy.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, for reasons I think
Sure.
I explained earlier. Yeah. And that was nice because actually...
did people think you were part of more the drag scene, or were there some assumptions there?
There were sometimes presumptions.
Okay.
And it was interesting because most of the folks that asked me were either drag or trans. Sort of, are you drag? Are you trans?
Okay, so they were wondering themselves.
Sure.
They came up right and asked
pretty
you.
much
Okay.
forward. And I remember the first time I answered, I think I said, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
But the second time I was asked the question, I remember saying, I'm trans. That doesn't mean I don't think drag is cool, but I'm not the same that way.
Yeah,
I'm
different.
definitely trans.
It's different.
And what's neat that I think is that the community over there are very accepting of the whole spectrum. And so some of the drag performers there are trans.
Yeah, that's right.
Some of them are drag.
That's right.
And
they identify like as gay men or...
Mostly, yeah. And one of the best things about... is that recording again?
That's okay.
Coming out was sort of awakening into this whole new community of friends.
Yeah, right.
And really good and strong friendships.
I'm just amazed that you... I'm not going to say survived, not really survived, but that you didn't have contact with them before then. You were just living a very separate life. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do have some very close friends, and I'm very close with my kids.
Yeah.
And I was aware that my younger had definitely come out to me as non-binary, which I supported, obviously.
When was that?
Oh, probably about maybe 3-4 years ago, and they were not comfortable talking to their mother about it. She's pretty conservative anyway.
Okay.
And I remember just saying, well, you're safe with me. And
did you talk about your own identity then?
Not much.
Okay.
And I think part of that is the old habit of being Mama Chris. I don't. If you're my child, I don't want to put any of my own burdens on you.
Okay.
I have learned that
So it
that's
sounds like
not
you
a good
just-
thing to do.
Well, you just kind of absorb. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
I
actually,
mean, I don't mean to therapize you or something.
No, that's all right.
It but that's what it kind of sounds like.
No, that's definitely the case. It isn't anymore.
Great.
And with both of my children, I've found that I'm very open. And actually, another one of the nice things, not that it seemed nice at the time, I became emotionally very vulnerable and open to both of my children after my wife left. And they stepped right up as my support system.
Great.
And
yeah, a lot of they just did I think it was Pew Research, one of those big ones. They just did a huge poll, a huge research project about different age categories and how they think about trans people and that sort of thing. And all like the younger people are just so cool with it. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, one of my best supporters is my daughter-in-law, my older kid's wife.
Yeah.
And that has come into a kind of a very positive thing. So I came out in June.
Oh wow, June.
Yeah.
June. Oh, June. And what was your come out? I mean, why do you call June your coming out?
Well, because that was the month that I did.
Okay, but what did that look like?
That
Because you've been
consisted
doing
of me
things for a while.
Going public.
Okay, going public.
And
like asking people to call you by your name and that sort of thing?
Hadn't quite gotten there. Well, except at the gay bar I went to.
Okay.
But I did with my children. I hadn't yet with my wife, who wasn't living with me anyway.
So when you say you came out, what did you do then?
I had already gotten some nice makeup. I'd gotten all my clothes together, including a pair of modest falsies and
So a wardrobe.
Wardrobe. I thought about how I would talk. I realize now that a falsetto was a ridiculous thing to do, but
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out who I was and
Yeah.
how I would express myself.
Voice is often the most difficult part. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so that consisted mostly of that first night out. And that was kind of, it was very interesting because I met some friends. And
Did this coincide with Pride Month?
yes,
Okay. All right. Good.
on purpose.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And the other thing I started doing was subtle at work. I started wearing my nails painted.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And
It's kind
wearing
of a
rings.
magenta color. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of the colors I like. And
You were mentioning that you met with some friends.
yeah, there was Ultima and Jeremy
Okay.
and really Zandria, another trans woman who passed away just
So it sounds like
couple
you're
of
really
months ago.
kind of collecting a community around you. That's wonderful.
Well, it's very odd because a number of the folks there have gotten to calling me their drag auntie.
Okay.
It's not really a drag mama, but
Sure.
drag auntie. And I do seem to be someone that people can approach and speak to, and I'm very non-judgmental, and I'm a good listener. And,
Sure.
And people love my drawings too, which is something that kind of came out of the whole thing. And Marco insisted that he have one of my drawings for his wall, and I was like, well, sure, you can have this one. I mean, I don't sell them or anything anyway.
Sure,
And,
sure.
So one of the things I found most uplifting, and I really love whenever I go there, is everybody knows me there.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, Judy's
Yes.
here. And it's so very genuine.
Isn't that a lovely feeling?
Oh, it's
You walk
wonderful.
in and people are like, "Oh, I'm so happy." I used to have that too when I was a teenager and I was a punk rock new wave or whatever. I would go into the bars, and in Texas you could do that when you were a teenager at the time, and now it's 21 or whatever. But everybody would want to hug me. They were all on X too, so I think that was part of it. But everybody really liked me because I was just, I was the second. Somebody said that I was the second most hugged person there.
Well, see, and it's funny too because I'd really been missing being hugged and things like that because that hadn't happened for a long time. So I love just the genuine friendliness of people there, and even
it sounds like it.
There's a very good sort of.
They sound very concerned about you, and your happiness.
We're all concerned about each other.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful that you felt welcome because you did read that review. So whoever did that, blessing on you for doing that because
very
you
much so.
welcomed somebody else into the space. You know. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes gay bars can be a little bit unwelcoming sometimes to trans women and even to drag queens because there was this thing with gay men acting straight acting, or hypermasculine, and so they tend to eschew parts of the community that are more feminine, which is terrible.
No, and then actually one of the
it's a community because we have lots of different people,
very much so. And well, so actually it reminds me of so I've been gaining more confidence.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And I've been applying for more jobs within the park service I work for.
And this is the state system.
Yeah, the Commonwealth. Okay. Yeah, and so I'll wear eye makeup. I don't wear the wig. It doesn't really go with the uniform. The uniform is unisex anyway, so women would wear the same uniform as men.
Yeah, it's kind of boring.
It is, and although the campaign hat's kind of cool. I got one of those Smokey the Bear hats.
Oh, I love those.
So I do wear eye makeup, and I wear my nails, and actually I've gotten mostly compliments from visitors.
Great.
Because I'm in a very public position.
Great.
And
people are probably going to the Cape as well, and so it's probably pretty liberal.
Yeah, it's where I work. It's not that bad, except with the blockhead I work for. And he's had issues with every person in my particular position because I'm the visitor services supervisor for the last 10 years. It's like there's this long saga. He never gets along with visitor services supervisors. And he's basically just this lawn mowing blockhead who has risen to his highest level of incompetence.
Sure.
But I don't know if he found out I'm out or not because I never really told him.
But you do wear makeup.
I do wear makeup, and I do wear and I know the one of my predecessors was a gay man that he had a lot of trouble with.
Okay.
And then one of my staff members who wasn't gay but liked to wear earrings. This guy basically said, to me, he said, "Oh, is so and so gay?"
Yeah.
Like in that very
gay.
pejorative way, and I was like, I've met his wife, so I don't think so, but I'm not proud of that answer.
Yeah, that's kind of it's none of his business.
What I should have said is, no, that's none of your business, and how dare you even ask me?
Right. And also, I mean, there's a, and I'm glad that you thought of that it was none of his business, even though, and that, because it's terrible because somebody's asking you a question, so you want to defend them. But sometimes the answer actually reinforces the stereotype, which is terrible, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's like a catch-22.
Yeah, very much so. I'm glad you understand that.
Yeah.
Because
of course.
I'm not sure I understand myself that well.
No, it's
I'm still
a subtlety.
A little pejorative to myself.
No, it's
I felt
a subtlety.
like I let him down by not.
Yeah.
By not just sticking up for him. Yeah. But yet I realized that I've had all of this socialization and that I'm glad you perceive that my main goal was to just make it easier for my employee.
Yeah.
And the quickest route to that was
to
just say, no, he's married.
That is the quickest route. Also, and I'm going to reinforce that too, even though it's, none of it anybody's business. But, obviously we know that there's a lot of cis and straight men who do body modifications.
Absolutely.
They have lots of beautiful tattoos all over the place. They have lots of earrings. They have nose piercings, whatever. They adorn themselves as well,
But this guy I work for is very conservative. And I mean, the worst thing about him is he puts on hate radio in the office, which is technically against the rules. But it's like I've got to pick my battles, and that's not one.
Yeah.
I became a little more open after that rather than being more withdrawn.
Great.
And I had applied for another job, as I mentioned, for a year round, and the person who is an acquaintance of mine on Facebook and actually knows that I'm out, and he actually asked me, he said, so we're going to have you come in for an interview, and I'd just like to know, I'd like to know what pronouns to use, and I'd like to know how you prefer to be addressed. Do you prefer to be Judy? Do you prefer to be Christopher?
Great.
And he gave me a day to think about it, or actually asked for a day, and he was like, cool, that's good. And I thought about it, and I said, all right, it's a job interview. So I think even though me and Matt are friends, my formal name is more appropriate. And what I plan to do is be C. Jude, just initialize my Christopher. And so I called him up and I said, look, I prefer to be called Jude. And Judy's informal, and that's fine. And I dressed as a woman for my job interview.
Even with the male name?
Yeah.
Wow,
well,
that's
Jude
cool.
is kind of... honestly, I was inspired by watching a cartoon where, like, it is this, like, what is it called? Anyway, the main character is Judy.
Okay.
But she's frequently called Jude by a lot of her friends.
Okay.
And so I'm thinking, all right, yeah, Jude will work.
Okay.
And
how did that go? Was that comfortable for you?
I was astonishingly comfortable. I didn't wear my wig. I have pretty much a shaved head underneath here anyway. And so I thought, that's what my sister does. My sister does shaved head, and she's genetically female.
There's all kinds of ways to be female, right?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, actually, I like having the long hair, but it takes a long time to grow.
Yeah.
And
also, if you just can't, then who cares?
Well, and there is a bald spot to be dealt with. Yeah. So it's like I don't really want to have hair interrupted.
Before I transitioned, when I was thinking about it for a long time, I actually grew my hair out to my shoulders. I don't know, maybe as a last hurrah or something like that. But I really liked it. But then, of course, testosterone does take its effect. So, yeah.
Yeah, actually, one of the other reasons that I was very much encouraged by another friend of mine.
Yeah.
Who was actually maybe I'm wrong. I forget about Sam now. Sam was an apprentice of mine. But when I first met her, she was Samantha. And literally one of my apprentices at the museum who I trained.
Okay.
And
another trans person?
Yes,
oh,
yes.
Great.
Trans male.
Oh.
And when he came out as Sam, he was pretty public about it on Facebook. We've been good friends, and actually some of my goats went to live with him at his farm.
Okay.
So there's quite a connection there. And actually, I had some private conversations with Sam about coming out, which definitely were very helpful and supportive. And Sam's on male hormone therapy.
Yes, me.
Yeah, and it's working. It's beautiful for him.
Yeah.
And in my family also, because my family
this is really personal, but are you doing that sort of thing?
Not yet.
No.
I've talked to my doctor. She thinks it would be best if I quit smoking and cut down on drinking first.
Yes. Smoking is a big issue.
Very much so. So I need to stop smoking.
Yeah.
Working on it.
Is it something where you could just do like patches or something like that?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
that might be a good
I quit once 7 years ago. For 7 years.
Yeah. It's actually with estrogen therapy, whatever those chemicals are. It's actually they have to be quite monitored. A little bit more so than testosterone, but there are issues, of course, with testosterone as well. Yeah.
I appreciate my doctor. Actually, I was a little nervous about coming out to her about it, but I finally just was like, all right,
oh great,
do this.
And she was cool.
Very much
great.
So. She was just like, well, we can talk about that, but there are health issues involved with estrogen, particularly with smoking.
That's right.
So, I mean, just on the aside, ever since I came out, I used to have anxiety issues that seemed to be driving my blood pressure. I had perfect blood pressure the last physical I had, which was just a couple weeks ago.
Wonderful.
And she said my lungs sound better.
Are you cutting down?
Definitely cutting down.
Yeah, great.
And the last time I succeeded, it was one of these things where it's like I would basically cut out one every week. And eventually I was down to like 3. And I'm like, why are you wasting your time with 3 cigarettes a week?
Yeah. I'll tell you, I applaud you for trying, because I did quit when I was a young person. I quit when I was 23. I smoked from 17 to 23. I smoked really heavily, like cigars and roll your owns and, filterless Camels, whatever. So it was really heavy, and hardest thing I'd ever done. Ever done. Amazing. It took me a year of going back and forth, buying and then throwing it away, wetting the cigarettes, tossing them away, crushing them, then buying some more and doing it all over again. But finally I did give it up. Yeah, it was great. When I did.
I've done it before.
Yeah.
And so it's like I can do this again. And then their health is involved too.
That's right.
It's not good for them.
That's right. Yeah.
And, frankly, I'd like to stick around. I've got 2 grandchildren, and I'm even more incented to live longer now, because I feel like I've opened this whole new chapter.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And so anything that gets in the way of that is now suddenly become like, no, we don't need that anymore.
I noticed that, and also for myself, but other trans people often don't feel like there's a future. We can't really see it, but when you transition or you're in that process or wherever you're at with that, then things kind of do feel like there is a future.
Very much so.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain.
Like, I'm amazed that I'm 52. Like, I'm like, how did I ever get here?
I'm a bit older than that.
Well, that's how I know kind of your references.
Yeah, a lot of my friends
similar
at the place I go to are astonished at how old I actually am. There were a couple of them that were like, "No, you're lying." It was like, "Oh, thank you. You're being very flattering, but no, I will be 60 next year."
I love the gap, by the way, in the front there.
Oh, that's natural.
I have a gap too, but I had to have one of my teeth worked on, and because I actually chipped it when I was very little. And so there's been different appliances that have been used as the technology has increased. And the last person who fixed it actually closed the gap a little bit. And I was like, I was so mad.
Aww.
I know. I wanted more of a gap. But
actually, one of the things I've never been very happy about with my first wife, the mother of my kids, is my older child, Phil, had the same beautiful gap. But Emily always hated her teeth.
Oh no! Did she close it?
So she had all kinds of braces stuff for him, and it was hell for all of us because he hated it. And his younger sibling, I wouldn't let her do that.
Yeah.
And just as my teeth came in just fine, his teeth came in just fine.
Yeah.
Even though there were these concerns, it was like, no, it doesn't matter. And he has that beautiful, and it runs in my family.
Yeah,
my dad has the same thing.
A gap is not a functional thing that is going to impact your life. It's just a feature.
Yeah, no, I mean, I used to get called Chipmunk and Beaver when I was a little kid because I had very big incisors, and they did hang out over my lips.
Sure. Yeah, but you're a taller person, so
sure.
Yeah.
No, it's just anatomy. But I'm glad that ultimately they were left alone. Actually, the one thing that wasn't great is my mother did submit to something of that because she was doing braces herself, and so she had been persuaded by the dentist that I should have a night brace to try to control my overbite because my teeth were sticking out. And sure enough, the only teeth I've ever had real trouble with are the ones that those bands were on. And those teeth,
It's so strange, like all this control of these minor things about our bodies. When I was younger, I was like, my parents kept alluding to this thing like that I was fat or something. When I was a kid, I definitely was not fat. I was, which I don't care about, but I wasn't. I was just athletic. I was bulkier, because I was athletic. It's interesting, like just how controlling everybody is about these things, about our bodies.
I've always been thin.
So strange. Yeah.
And I remember my sister too, my sister Noelle also. I remember my poor mother getting called by the school nurse and being questioned whether we were undernourished. Which is ridiculous.
Yeah, there's such variety. I mean, just look at us. I mean, this is the variety right here.
Yeah.
Right? Tall and thin and short and fat.
It's a different, it's just the variation that we have. And it's, I'm happy with the way I am.
Yeah.
I might like to get a boob job eventually.
Sure.
That would just make me feel a little better. But nothing radical. I was just thinking about that. I was talking with my sister Noelle. I was like, no, I mean, something A or B that matches my frame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Because I'm comfortable with the frame I have. Mm-hmm. I've always been told I have sort of an elven frame. And I am very quick.
Well, you have to think about your dresses that you want to wear too, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Yeah. And so I definitely have a look that I prefer.
Yeah,
and it's been very interesting after spending so much time in the shadows in a way. Always wearing bulky camouflage clothing, not wanting to let anyone look like who I am.
Yeah.
Or know who I look like, except when I'm doing the performances as a pilgrim and stuff. Where I would just, as I look back on it now, I'm like, wow, I was actually, it's kind of like what you were talking. I was almost there.
Yeah.
And living as close to the edge of what I wanted as I felt safe. And honestly, one of the things I'm most grateful for with my wife that left me is...
It's interesting that you're the safest now that you're out of a relationship.
I am. Very much so.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to realize that.
Yeah.
But one of the greatest gifts she ever gave me was leaving. Because I don't think I would have ever been able to come out and be myself.
Right.
I might have not come to this conclusion until I was 80, and that would have been inconvenient.
And you were saying that you were so depressed, and I mean, that's no way to live.
Anxious, and all of these various things, like I used to have night sweats, nightmares. I remember I'd like sweat.
I'm glad you had those tropical islands to go to sometimes.
Yeah, although those dreams didn't come, and even my artwork had gone away for like 10 years. I wasn't doing it. And it's been like a renaissance even before I started realizing that I was trans. And the renaissance sort of started slowly.
So other aspects of your life were kind of blooming as well.
Things that I had laid aside for such a long time. I was so involved in keeping up a relationship.
Right.
So I feel like that was what I was good at. I mean, I've been like fucking almost 40 years of practice.
Once again, I'm going to say that's such a familiar thing. I've heard from older women saying that. Right, supporting their man, supporting their family, subsuming themselves. A lot of actually middle-aged women get out of that through a divorce, and then they become artists, and they do what they actually want to do.
Well, it is kind of funny the way that's happening.
Yeah,
because that I relate to that cycle.
Yeah, and that's generational as well. It's a very generational
and
experience.
yet I've known some women in that situation, and they still tend to be the ones that are closer to their children.
Oh, yeah.
And I am that too.
Yeah, right.
And, but my kids are very happy for me.
Great. Great.
And I'm happy for me, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate. I mean, one of the sweeter things that happened, I always call my mom for her birthday, and I always sing happy birthday to her.
Oh, wonderful.
And this year, and her birthday's in July, so it was after I'd come out, and she knew. And so I did my usual happy birthday, and she said, now I want to hear happy birthday from Judy.
Do you guys connect, by the way, about being artists?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, there's a picture on the wall in there that my mother did, because she was an artist and is. Yeah, we have that connection. going way back, actually. I remember when she was teaching art at the Wadsworth Athenaeum. I used to get to go along. And I remember I took a course. She was teaching a different course. And she had several courses she was teaching, and then I just had the one in the morning. And at the time, it was connected to another museum, and I just had the run of the place. And it was just so cool.
Yeah.
And I still remember that as just being kind of magical, being able to wander about and see everything
on your own time.
On my own, yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Right.
And yeah, I'm probably very similar to my mom emotionally. My dad, different. And I spent a lot of time trying to do stuff that he approved of. Not that he ever asked me.
Sure.
I remember
but that's expected,
He'd get frustrated because he worked a lot, and so every now and then he'd have a little time on the weekend, and he'd be like, "Oh, hey, let's throw the football around." And I would like, okay. And then usually after the first or second throw, I'd end up getting hit with the ball.
Okay.
And I just start crying, because I've always been very sensitive. I cry very easily to this day. And then I'm not sure what the dynamic that went on, because then they would be sort of, Dad was frustrated. He would go talk to Mom. I'd be sitting out under the tree crying.
Were you more distant from him?
Oh, generally, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Do you feel like you even kind of knew him, or?
Not when I was little. He did seem like a stranger.
Yeah. I had the same kind of relationship. I didn't quite know my parents. Strange.
Yeah.
To live in the same house and not really know them.
Yeah, and it's odd because I get along very well with my dad now, and
great.
And that's different too. But yeah, when I was a kid, I would never have said that I disliked him, but I would have definitely said that we're very different. And, and I
Does he talk to you about the trans stuff at all? Or
no, he's not real comfortable talking about that. Although he did. Our last phone call was very cute. Because I do occasionally date, and I realized that, like, all right, if I'm dating as a lady, I need to start thinking about that. And it's like, so I'm going out on this date with a guy. We might end up visiting at his house at the end of it. I live alone, so what resources do I have? Well,
are you thinking about safety?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I have a really great relationship with my son and my daughter-in-law, and I just felt it would be more comfortable to call my daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
So I called her.
As like a safety call?
Yeah, basically I said, look, I'm going out. I'm probably going to be home before midnight. If I don't call by midnight, either you or Phil, then you'll know that there's something wrong. And that was very good. So I was relating the same thing to my dad this week, because we talk on the phone from time to time, and it was just so cute. He was like saying, well, yeah, I'm glad you're doing that, but you got to remember now, now that you're a lady, guys are creeps. And you gotta be careful. Like, I notice sometimes on your Facebook posts you say where you are at such and such a time. He says, say where you were, don't say where you are. And it was just so cute listening to this advice.
Well, that is very good advice too.
Yeah.
That's
it
great.
is.
And you do have to kind of worry about that now. It's amazing how that shift happens. And I will tell you, for me, it went the other way.
How interesting.
Right. So I didn't have to worry as much.
How interesting. No, it's tangible. Just even with the various couple of creepy people that I've met. And again, fortunately, the folks, like the bartenders there, are very observant.
And you had that experience with people around you, so you were safe, but now you know what to look out for. That's great.
So that's it's all a learning experience.
Yeah, because some people get into situations that they don't know, they're trusting, and things happen.
I'm learning not to be quite so trusting.
Yes.
And, I mean, one
not
of the things
not desperate for love, and like really evaluate who's in front of you. Yes. Yeah.
No, and to a certain extent I've taken on the persona of a lady, and a classy one.
That's right. That's right.
It's like, if you are not prepared to be a gentleman, then you should expect to be dismissed.
That's right. That's right. I that's a good attitude. What's in your future? What is coming up soon, or what are you dreaming about?
I'm definitely dreaming about it. One of the greatest things about that interview last week was actually that the woman on the interview panel had to say, it was obviously not like just like politeness. She was like, "Oh, I love your outfit."
Oh, great.
And that just made me feel wonderful.
Great.
I mean, short term, I want to quit smoking.
Yeah.
I'm still looking. I like, also short term, my winter position will be in a different park where people are a little more open, and I don't have the same, it's not fair to dinosaurs to call them a dinosaur. So that's an opportunity where I'm actually thinking, like I was like, all right, I've got some party clothes, that's nice, but I need to have businessy stuff.
Sure, just
like
every day.
Yeah. And so I'm slowly working on building that part of my wardrobe.
Yeah.
And yet on the other side of it, one of my favorite friends these days is someone I'm pretty sure they're bisexual drag.
Okay.
Normally presenting male.
Sure.
And they and Ultima really want me to get involved in some of their drag performances, and there are a couple of other trans people that are involved in their group, and so
I've known lots of trans people.
I'd really like
also
to do
drag.
that, and I haven't replied yet to Gabriel, actually, because I had mentioned I was slightly interested, and then just about the time you arrived, his reply came back.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, all right. But
the thing about drag is it's really over the top, right? Nobody in the world actually lives as a drag queen, right, out in everyday life. I mean, maybe there's a couple people, I don't know. But it's really over the top. There's even like cisgendered women who are drag queens. They just love to dress up just like the gay men do.
I've been going to several performances, and so I've been enjoying them a lot.
Yeah,
and watching my friends perform, and even got some idea. Me and Ultima were talking about them because we're both fencers.
Oh, okay.
About doing some sort of a thing with practice foils, which are plastic,
Sure.
Some kind of a performance.
Sounds very theatrical.
Yeah, and what's odd is I used to never dance.
Okay.
And unless I was drunk, in which some people would say, actually, you're a pretty good dancer, I'm surprised. But now when I'm dressed as I feel like I am, I have this sort of moveness that I didn't have, and I'm wondering...
And you don't need the alcohol for it.
No, I don't at all. Actually, it's so funny.
Great.
I was thinking, like, the time I got in trouble, I had really not that much, but I had a little before. And now when I go out, I have hardly any alcohol because I don't like to restrict my... I don't need it. I can move the music without it. I don't feel like I need anything to relax when I'm as I am.
Right.
Where I use the analogy, if you're familiar with Star Trek, I don't know if you're familiar with old Star Trek.
Sure.
And the Romulans, and how they had a cloaking device.
Sure.
And that meant they could be completely undetectable. But there was a downside to the cloaking device, is that they couldn't see out well.
Okay.
And I use that analogy for myself. I feel like I was so good at my cloaking. Most people would have never guessed I was even bi.
Yeah.
Just seemingly very cisgender. That, like the Romulans in their cloaked ship, I couldn't see out. And now I can see out. Wow. I can listen. It's like I have my full sensor array available now.
Right.
And
Get rid of those camo clothes too.
Well, yeah, actually, those are mostly wearing out anyway. You can see I'm not doing camo anymore.
No.
And actually, I've always loved bright colors.
Well, they'd be hard to stuff into those boots too.
Oh, that's true too. You never know.
They're like knee-high lace-up boots.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they were lace-up. They're zip-up. Okay.
Oh, they're zippers and laces.
Oh, okay. I saw the other side.
Zippers are great to get in. Yeah, no, the laces are on the outside,
Okay.
so very good for adjusting.
Yeah.
But yeah, that.
Yeah. That's really profound, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, that is really.
But it really, I feel like I'm actually. I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like suddenly living with like Technicolor and sense around when before you were like black and white television and radio crackling.
No, I understand. And you're in your late 50s, and it's almost like it sounds like life is renewed. It's new.
I know.
Yeah.
My younger child was saying, because and they were talking about coming out, and they'd had some discussion with some friends, and they asked me, and they said, "Do you feel like you're 15 again?" And I said, oddly enough, yes, except not nearly as miserable.
Yes, right.
Because I remember how miserable I was when I was 15.
I know. People are like, "Oh, I wish I was young again." I'm like, I don't think so. Not in my life. I don't want to be back to being young. But I get what you're saying, though. Like, it's some people describe it as like they're making up for lost time, or that they feel like this joy that they can go play and they can go out to the bar and they can have more fun in the role that they've been suppressing for so long.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that I suppose looking toward the future is I really prefer to be as I am, like on my home days.
Sure.
I don't, I don't wear anything really very male. I'll wear my wig around the house. I don't give a shit if there's any, I'm not out there to show anyone else. I just feel good that way.
Sure.
And that has been very liberating. And actually it's funny because I can feel intellectually the idea, I've lost all this time. It's like, no, I don't want to hurry. I want to cherish every moment.
That's such a positive way to think about it. Yeah.
I feel as though there's an enormous weight that has been lifted off my shoulders, and I was so used to bearing it that I didn't even know it was there.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've definitely been bearing it for a long time.
Very long time.
Yeah. Sounds like you'd been kind of bearing the weight of other people around you too for a while.
Yeah. There's that.
Yeah.
That's actually more difficult to set aside. I have to sometimes just watch myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good to watch yourself, We get into patterns, I have them too, totally.
But on the other hand, I like the fact that I am a supportive person, and like when my fairly new friend died, and it was very unexpected, I was able to be very supportive with the folks that I think knew her longer and were more hurt than I was.
Yeah. So you're very good at being an emotional support. Yeah.
I am, and that's something I don't want to leave aside.
Yeah.
And it's just something that I don't want to spend all my time doing at the
That's
same
right.
time.
And also people can take advantage of that a little bit, and you can become subsumed by it. For me, I get into I want to always help people. I want to solve the problem for them, or solve whatever's happening around them or something like that. But then people get used to that, and I've definitely been taken advantage of, before. So I have to watch what I'm doing and think, okay, I'm giving too much.
It's very
here.
male. I
Yeah.
have to solve your problem.
Yeah, well, yeah, or not so much like I'm domineering, but like, if, for instance, I'm volunteering for a nonprofit or something, and they need money. I will go out in the community and solicit that for them and be quite successful with it. But then they won't offer me a job doing that. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yes.
No, it's funny.
Because they got the free labor already because I'm giving it. You know.
Yeah, no, I definitely, it's funny because I remember back with my first wife, she had a very male attitude whenever I had a difficulty, or probably, actually my second wife too, to a certain extent. What can I do to solve the problem? As opposed to, I don't expect you to solve the problem.
Yeah.
I just like you to listen to me while I'm talking about it.
Yeah. Or support or love or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I just need a little hug. I don't need you to fix it.
Right.
And that reminds me that I've been wired the way I am ever since I was small.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it's nothing new.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And some of it is nature, some of it is nurture as well.
Sure.
You know, I was talking with somebody who's in the medical field. She was one of my first interviews, and she was saying that there's a book called The Gendered Self where they talk about that. They this author looked through a lot of medical studies to write the book, and the author was saying that our brains are sometimes washed with chemicals, you know, with hormones when we are in utero and that sort of thing, and it can actually change that. It can change gene expression, basically. Yeah. So we become, for some people who are trans, that is part of the reason why they are trans. For other people, there's different reasons, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think it is something natural.
Yeah.
It's been in my nature for forever.
Yeah.
And I kind of like the fact that I'm in a place in my life where I don't have to be afraid. At least not much.
Yeah.
Cautious and wary is always wise, but
yeah.
I used to be terrified when I was little.
Yeah, and you also got some people looking out for you.
I have a lot of support.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate that way. I'm now involved in a couple of transgender groups. So I'm in Transgender New England and Transgender Boston. Just
Great.
as the Facebook pages. And I sometimes honestly have to sit back and think I'm very fortunate.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a very strong, even some of my most macho cis friends are like, my friend Josh was just like, well, I guess the outfit's going to be different from now on. But, totally like, he was like, I've always known you as a brother. I'm happy to have another sister now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's been very, even one of my other friends who is one of these folks that acts more liberal than he actually is.
Oh, sure.
And I was afraid that he was going to end up in that zone, but he didn't. He actually gave me, and I was like, my birthday was back in May. He was like, no, this is your rebirth present. But he gave me a Tolkien book, and I was just like, oh. So I'm very fortunate. I
sounds like it.
Have a lot of loving friends. I have my mighty dogs.
It sounds like you are taking good care of yourself in terms of health. You're thinking about, quitting smoking, and you've reduced it, and the drinking, and you're really accessing resources, health, as well as community resources. It sounds like you're doing great.
It's funny. I like myself now.
Yeah.
I've even been doing kayaking. And,
okay. On the pond? Or?
Yeah, on the pond.
Okay, yeah.
I've been all the way up to Carver on that river.
What's the river, by the way?
It's the Antic.
Okay.
But yeah, it's... no, even my mom was noticing in some of the pictures. She was like, yeah, you're looking really good these days. I was like, thank you.
Great. Wow.
But I think that some of that is... I worry sometimes that I'm like, all right, am I just in some euphoria? Is, there going to be some crash?
Well, yeah, could be.
But I'm thinking more likely just ups and downs.
Yeah, ups and downs. Yeah.
I've already experienced a little of that.
You've had enough crashing.
Yeah. No, I'm not into crashing anymore. Fortunately, there were no accidents involved in the DUI. But I still have this odd voice in the back of my head. And I think it just comes from social conditioning. It's sort of like, it'll come up and it's like, this is just a phase, or is this just because you're crushed because your wife left you? And I think part of it is I'm anticipating what other people might say. Because when I examine it inside, it's like, no.
Well, it sounds like it's been, I mean, there's been decades where you haven't done much, you haven't expressed that much, but there's a recurring theme in your life.
Oh,
so,
sure.
Yeah.
I feel often like I spent an enormous time as a caterpillar. And then I spent some time in chrysalis. And now I'm a butterfly.
Yeah. And everybody's process is different. And, you know, trans people also don't have to do surgery and hormones and all that to be trans as well. You know, so if your health is in such a way where you can't quite give up, cigarettes, etc., and do everything that your doctor wants to do, you still are a trans person. You know, there's no like qualifying thing or whatever, which is great. There's been a lot of activism around that, and I'm so glad that the younger people are kind of opening that up, you know, because it used to be very restricted. Like, you have to do this and this and this, and then you're a trans person. No, you're a trans person anyway, you know. So.
That reminds me of some. I went on a couple dates with gay guys, and they were like, "You're not bi, you're gay. You're just denying that." And I was like, no, really, you're wrong. No. It's like, yeah, this is the last date with you, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how that comes in within the LGBT community. There's some of those sentiments, and there's, you know, some lesbians as well who are very anti-male and then also anti-trans. Like they take their hatred of men and then impose it on trans people, you know, as if, you know, trans women are men. For one thing, they're not. And they're just not dealing with what's going on with them.
No, that happened at the place just this Saturday night.
Really? Wow.
Some lesbian
just even
woman
locally
got extremely offended at some of the trans performers
Yeah.
or drag performers and literally like started yelling at the DJ and she had to be asked to leave.
Goodness gracious. Yeah. I mean, I saw that when I was coming out in the late 80s. I came out into separatist community, actually. There were all these separatists around me, and lesbian separatists, and they were saying the same things that these so-called gender critical TERF women are saying now. That stuff just never went away, and it is just exploded now. There's so much of that around. It's really, I feel like things are kind of worse now than when I was younger. It's almost harder in some ways to come out as trans now in this environment.
It reminds me of something my sister said that was kind of encouraging.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because she was so funny. She was like, well, if anybody ever says it's a phase, it's like, you couldn't have picked a worse time.
I know. I know. There's all these, you know, not here in Massachusetts, but, you know, some of the neighboring places like up in New Hampshire and whatever, you know, anti-trans laws, you know, in the Midwest, in the West, in the Rocky Mountains, down south. You know, I mean, there's all these things going on.
Actually, and
Florida.
My dear dad, he can surprise me sometimes.
Yeah.
He also warned me that there are guys out there that try to arrange dates with trans women just so they can do bad things to them.
That's right. That's right.
I'm just thinking, oh, Dad, you are so nicer
That's
than
right.
I thought sometimes.
It sounds like he's done some homework himself, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really loving. That's really loving. He is.
I mean, I'm so fortunate that way.
Yeah.
And my family has a lot of experience. Very supportive in the family, at least part of the family. We have kind of our conservative wing, but you know, my sister Shelley, who's kind of a Christian conservative,
So it sounds like a kind of a really mixed bag.
It is. Yeah. I mean, but I give her a lot of credit. She messaged me back, and when I announced it, and she said, I've always known you as my brother. This may take a little getting used to. Can you please be patient? And I thought, yeah.
Yeah.
And I sent her a message back saying that, you know, the person that was your brother is never going to be gone.
Right.
I'm still that same person. I'm just different.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's a great note to end on, actually. I have really enjoyed meeting with you. I did have, I will admit, some trepidations coming out here. I've had some more rurally based interviews that didn't go so well, unfortunately.
Joey came to visit.
But this has been lovely. It's been really lovely meeting you, and also to know that you're in this rural area and you're doing so well, you know, and that you're having fun and you're accessing resources. And here's the cat doing what cats do. Next, this cat will be pawing on my computer and taking a nap there.
She might try.
Hi, I know I smell like dogs, don't I?
She's used to that.
Anyway, try to end this. Thank you, Kitty.
Come here, sweetheart. Come on. Come see me.
Wow, that's a big cat too.
Oh yeah, she's a chubby.
Yeah. Anyway, so thank you so much for having me in your home too. This was so easy.
I'm glad.
Some of them are very difficult because you have to do a lot of arranging and that sort of thing, especially in urban areas like parking and with my dog, and you know. So this has been great.
I'm glad.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Very lovely meeting you.
Yeah, lovely to meet you. And you know, so glad to hear about your life, and you know, you said some pretty profound things tonight too, which is lovely. Yeah, really appreciate that. Anyway, thanks y'all. I'll be posting this in a few weeks. You know, it takes me a while. It just does. Yeah, so
I'm really happy you came out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Cut.